Hi, welcome. This video is all about microbiome testing, and I'm going to go through a sample report of a microbiome test and explain it to you in detail. Now, you may have already had a test or you're thinking of getting one. Well, this video is just for you. Now, I'm Shannon Burford. I've been running a busy clinic in Australia for over 20 years, and I use these tests commonly with my patients. Now, let's get straight into it, and I'll go to the sample now. Green right now is a sample from Nutripath Labs. They're an Australian company, and I usually use Nutripath unless I've got international patients. Now, just before we get started into this, there are several labs which are credible around the world, like Omba in the US, Viome in the US. There is Genova. I used to use those a lot, and some of the old videos have me talking about metametrics. I don't use those these days, but they are available, the Geneva reports in the US. And in Australia also, the Smart DNA. I have used those. I don't generally use those. I use Nutripath the most, and there's Microba in Australia too. I have used those, patients have used those, and I'm familiar with all of the reports, the majority of coming from around the world. But today we're looking at Nutripath. Now, just a little note that often other labs will use microbiome testing too, but they usually use the larger labs and they'll just rebrand them. Now, I'm not saying definitely they do, but for example, this one, Nutripath, they have the gear to test, and they will create the reports, and some other labs they'll use them and they'll rebrand. But let's get straight into it. It starts off, it's really detailed. You might be able to see there that it's 16 pages long. Now, is this necessary? It's very scientific. Some patients will use it, some patients won't. Now, there's a cost factor. We have to talk about that cost factor, because some people they're having gut issues. They just can't afford that test. But if you can afford it, look at this data. It is going to show you very specific, pinpointed areas to address. Now, starting off, we'll start at the top. We've got the basics of the color, the stool form. Is there some mucus there? This one's saying yes, there is. Now, there's a bit of blood there. That's a bit of a red flag there. We need to investigate that further. Now, I'll try and go fast paced through this video so you get the maximum information, and I might do a more detailed one later. So moving on to the short chain fatty acids, there's nothing coming up there, but if we look at the reference ranges, are they just cutting on the edge? Now, short chain fatty acids are the fuel really that the beneficial bacteria are making to repair your bowel. And when we've got issues such as leaky gut, intestinal permeability, and poor absorption of the food, these will come out, which means there's more chance of inflammation, such as this calprotectin, which is a precursor for inflammatory bowel disease. Into the GI functional markers, calprotectin, as I said, is an inflammatory marker. It may be indicating that there's a progression of inflammatory bowel disease or bleeding in the bowel. This one's quite high. We've got enzymes, secretory IgAs, and immune defense, often seen low in long-term gut issues as IBS. Zonulin, like leaky gut, and this is a fat marker, how much fat is in the stool. Now, they break them into parasites, worms, bacteria, viruses, and fungus. Now, there's a lot on this. It's a sample one. I don't normally see this many unless there's a real chronic case going on. But honestly, this is quite a lot. Now, a lot of these are opportunistic bacteria, which we'll get onto the next page. And there's 3 parasites there. These are to do with the ratios of the organisms and the whole microbiome. Now, parasites, these are coming up quite high. They are working together. Now, a bit of a sidetrack. Microbiome is a whole community of organisms. I often use the analogy of a party. Now, we've got people chatting, all ethnicities, everybody working together. Now, there is debate about blastocystis, for example. Is it all that bad? It is in the stool test. A lot of GPs will say that it's not an issue. It is, especially when things are higher and out of the ratio. But would it be an issue if it is present there, but it's low around this green area? That's a question for another video. But they are working together. So in this party, this fictional party, we've got some criminals or something over in the party, and they're smashing things up and they're causing inflammation. And then because of this, opportunistic bacteria will come in and they're causing havoc as well. And then the snowball starts to grow and the dysfunction starts to grow. Now, is it the parasites that were there first, or is it the opportunistic bacteria? That's a big question. Opportunistic bacteria here, there's quite a lot. And this is the snowball effect. Is it the diet? Is it the function of the bowel? Is it the inflammation? And that's really what the naturopath is trying to do, is fix this. So do we look at this test and just say straight away, oh, there's opportunistic bacteria in a scientific way, and to say we must eradicate it? Do we need to eradicate these parasites? Well, yes, but also no. And this is where case by case patient needs to think about their particular situation, because if they have low beneficial bacteria and they're getting a lot of negative symptoms, going straight in with some antimicrobials might cause a healing crisis and might make them 10 times worse. Is it important just for 2 weeks to bring down that inflammation with some herbs and just hold off on the antimicrobials? Because if they've been struggling for 5-10 years, is another 2 weeks going to make things all that worse? It would be better to do an anti-inflammatory approach first and adjust their diet and get them ready for the antimicrobials. Now, moving along, there are some organisms, bacteria, that are linked to autoimmunity. Now, GPs often don't acknowledge this, but there's a lot of growing evidence and more coming out that there are opportunistic bacteria that cross the leaky gut microvilli enter the blood, deposit into the tissue, and contribute to autoimmunity. And then moving on to the next page, we're talking about fungal organisms. And usually there are a combination of fungus, bacteria, and parasites, because as I said, it's a snowball effect. Now we're into the pathogens, and these are the acknowledged organisms that cause disease, thus called pathogens. The previous ones were opportunistic. Some practitioners will argue that they're not such an issue and they don't need to be eradicated. The pathogens, yes, like Helicobacter, with Barry Marshall in Perth, who won the Nobel Prize associating it with stomach ulcers. But once again, just to test for a breath test for Helicobacter or a detailed test like this, we're finding out what particular type of Helicobacter is it, and is it more of an issue to eradicate, or is it a strain that's resistant to some antibiotics, which may be helpful for you to deal with your particular issue. Viruses there as well. And then now we're into normal gut bacteria. So you can see this is very comprehensive. It's giving us very specific data on the balance of the microbiome in the gut. And do we have low amounts of beneficial bacteria? Do we have excessive amounts? And beneficial bacteria, yes, excessive amounts is an issue as well. It's not only about taking probiotics. Are you taking the right particular ones? Now, diet is underlying all of this. Let's say you've got this test result and it's got a lot of red and highlighted and the heart rate might be going up, but we need to take a breath and we need to look at holistically, and certain things like diet and stress are going to negatively impact this. So setting the foundation is really paramount to get your gut right. Colourful graphs and pictures, visuals, not not necessarily that helpful, but certainly adding extra information. Basically, what is a healthy balance and what is yours looking like? Okay, we can see you've got too many of inflammatory and not enough of those short chain fatty acid producing, repairing, reducing inflammation species. Now, then following parts just is expanding a little bit on what I've said. Now they do, I'll give you an example. In some areas, they'll give you some ideas of probiotics and take some acid and maybe take some enzymes, but it's not the only thing that you can do. But it is quite helpful that they're giving you that. And there's more explaining all the discrepancies in the report. And then right at the end, we've got fast tracking through this. Right at the end, we've got the 4R treatment. Now, this is foundation of naturopathic philosophy for gut treatment. Originally, it was called weed, seed, and feed. But generally for gut protocols, we want to first remove, so we want to have some antimicrobial substances. Now, these are not exhaustive in that these are the only ones, but they are many. Olive oregano is a common one, and berberine is a common one. And then next we want to replace, so those enzymes and acids and biles that are digesting the food. Then we want to re-inoculate, and we want to reduce inflammation and have prebiotics and probiotics. And then finally we want to get the whole system of sleep, diet, stress levels down, and we want to modulate those organisms and get it back to a baseline. Okay, so that is my take on the gut microbiome. Now, that was the report of the microbiome test. I'm sure you've found that very helpful. Now, carry on after this video, jump to the next ones. I'm going to keep reviewing all of these functional tests, and we're going to run through them and explain them, and then you can judge for yourself. Is it worth you spending the money and doing these tests? Is it going to be helpful for you to get over your health challenges? And this has been Shannon. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, and thank you.